Well, thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it. And welcome, folks. Thanks for showing up here on a middle of the week Wednesday meeting. And for the Bond Accountability Committee, I'm Brad Wright, the chair of the current chair of the Bond Accountability Committee, at least for a little bit, while we kind of wrap things up here, going towards the end of the bond. We've got a quorum. Just wanted to take a look real quick at the agenda that we've got set up for the committee to review, and if there's any amendments or other items that we want to throw in there, please let us know. But we're gonna take a look at the comments, and then a couple items of old business we just wanted to take a look at. Well, the one is the ongoing review of the bond status report, and then just to follow up on our lessons learned from last session, and then new business. Just the committee was wanting to take a look at any other ongoing impacts of the current COVID pandemic, if it's impacting the bond work right now, and then kind of moving into the last two items, B and C, or discussion of the bond, and looking towards closeout, what we should best do to kind of wrap things up as we're getting closer to the end of the 2014 bond. So I think we can make it through pretty quickly. I don't think anybody will be here till 8 o'clock, but we can if you want to. But we'll turn this over to Josh and Aaron for the public comments.
Brad, good evening, everyone. I do have a comment about the agenda. It's a late add. So Shelley has, and the communications team has put together a phenomenal bond website, and we'd like to share that with you at the end of our agenda today, if we have time. But Shelley will cover the bond website. We'll look at a couple of videos that the team has put together, bond overview, and a video about seismic. So if that's okay with the committee, we'd like to do that.
Terrific. I don't see any issues. Everybody else open to it?
That's good.
Terrific.
All right, so moving on to the public comment. So as I think most of you know, we put on our district website public comment, just if there's anything from the committee or anything from the community. We did not receive anything here for the last week, Brad, so no comment from our community.
Gotcha. And I think a lot of the focus is on other things right now, but it's good that we have it open. If anything pops up, we can respond to it. Moving on to the old business, we take a look at where we're at with the bond status report.
All right, so we're gonna have John present that tonight, and I'll open it up here for you, John.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right. Good evening, everybody. So we're kind of in that lull period where we're working in kind of closing out last summer's projects and kicking off the next summer's projects. So not a whole ton of movement on the financial side of things, more just kind of taking care of normal business, closing projects out, kind of finding some avenues to spend some additional money here and there. So just looking at the December report, the overall summary, our program reserve increased by $12,000, and our reserve and program, our reserve plus program contingency decreased by 176, I believe that's what it is. Aaron, can you zoom in just like a little bit more? Thank you. So our first line item here, the Five Oaks renovation budget, that decreased by $150,000. And that was savings that was in the project that we have actually transferred out of the main Five Oaks renovation project, and we transferred it into our district-wide facility repairs project. And that money is being used to look at a roof repair project for the school. This was something that was not in the original scope of the renovation project, but has kind of come up here. So we've taken that savings, we put in the facility repair project, and we're kind of kicking off scoping of that and trying to figure out the extent of the work and what needs to get done to get that roof in better shape. The next item here, the total funding increased by $12,000, and that was due to some additional ETO revenue. So we get a lot of this, and that's the Energy Trust of Oregon money that we get for doing energy incentives in some of our projects. So that 12K was part of the ACMA project and some of the energy incentives that we did as part of that rebuild project. So that all just went straight into the program reserve, and we get to figure out what we're going to do with it down the line. Item number 3 here, the SRGP, we started a new project, and that's the 2022 SRGP planning. And we started that with $100,000, and that money is coming from the seismic funding hold. We discussed this, I think last spring, probably with you all, where we were looking at a lot of savings coming from some of our seismic projects in the bond, and we were checking off all the voter commitments for those seismic projects and kind of figuring out what additional seismic work could we do across the district. So we have been kind of tapping that funding hold a little bit, and this month we are using it for a project to do some SRGP planning, which is the seismic rehabilitation grant program that we've been really successful in utilizing with some of these seismic projects. So we're looking at Whitford, Five Oaks, McKinley, and Capitol Center. So we'll use that $100,000 to put together, work with a consultant to put together some proposals that we will submit and hopefully get some grants out of that. And then also in the seismic realm, our Cooper Mountain seismic project, that budget actually decreased by $97,000. And that was due to the closeout of its SRGP grant, which we were successful in getting a couple years ago. The grant funds can only be used for construction costs, and due to some changes in the scope of the project and just where costs came in, we didn't actually utilize the entire grant that we were awarded. And our project manager on that tried to ask if there were a couple different ways we could still use that money for the project, and wasn't able to find any avenues to spend it. So since the construction costs came in under what the grant was, we had to return those monies. And that's it. Yeah.
If I could, just for a quick second, looking back
course.
on the previous line item where we were talking about kind of bringing in funds for Whitford, Five Oaks, McKinley. Yep. Can you fill us in on where those sit kind of on the seismic priorities, just for kind of awareness for the committee?
I can jump in on that. No problem. So Brad, those projects are in the queue for our next bond. So I'm glad you brought that up, because when we do the bond overview video from Shelley, when you look at that, they'll talk about seismic. It'll talk about which projects are going to be in the seismic program that we had budgeted for. So we're looking at the middle schools, and Five Oaks would be the first one that we would look to do, because we do have a roof project. So tying the roof project with the seismic work is going to be the first one out of the gate for seismic. The other schools that are talked about in there, Whitford and McKinley and Cap Center. So Whitford, definitely, that's a commitment that we're making in this next bond, the future bond. McKinley and Cap Center. Cap Center, if we can get to it. Yeah, go ahead, Darren.
So McKinley actually is the one that we're going to prioritize as far as the seismic grant application goes. McKinley is actually scheduled in this current bond, in the 2014 bond. It has a roof replacement. So in fact, I was going to talk about that a little bit later on COVID impacts. It was supposed to be a roof replacement this summer, but just with market conditions and just the schedules and roofing material availability, we're bumping it to next summer. But that does create the opportunity for us to pursue the seismic grant. So we're going to be submitting that next month. And if that's successful, we'll be able to do the seismic upgrade there at McKinley alongside the roofing upgrade.
Great. Thanks for filling in the picture for us.
All right, moving out of budget perspective and into schedule perspective, just a little note here talking about some of the process at where we're at with a hopeful next bond measure. So in December, community polling was completed on the potential of a future bond measure, and those results were discussed at the December 13th, 2021 school board meeting. So the next steps there is the school board will vote on if a measure will be brought to a future ballot, and that's a fun place to be in right now. So, and our challenges and opportunities, nothing has shifted here over the last couple of months with the report. Unfortunately, we are still dealing with some of these challenges and opportunities. So the big one here, which I'm sure we'll talk about more with the COVID impact update, is just supply chain issues like Aaron talked about. We're still looking at how this is impacting our 2022 projects. And especially now we're starting to go out to bid on some of these or start putting bid documents together on some of these projects and really starting to get a clear picture of what next summer could look like due to some of the COVID impacts. So, and then under there, just still talking about the Federal CARES Act and the ESSER funds that we are utilizing for some of our projects and putting those to good use for some of our HVAC work that we're doing as part of the bond. And those are the major highlights.
Great. Are there any questions, concern from the committee? Anything from the board?
Yeah, I have a question on, you said that ESSER funds are going to be used for the HVAC upgrades. How much money is that for that project? Do you have an idea, like how much will be used for that?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can find the number.
Okay.
So it varies by the project too.
Yeah.
Each different project has.
Do you know what projects, what schools are going to be impacted, like going forward? What schools are going to be impacted with those HVAC upgrades that will use ESSER money?
We do have a list, Sunita, that we can get to you. So right up the gate, we're looking at Barnes Gymnasium, West TV Gymnasium, and there are some other projects that we have put in that address the ventilation piece. There is no ventilation at West TV Gym, and so that ESSER money would be applied to support that.
So this may be my ignorance. I want to ask you a question. So for instance, if a school has a problem with their HVAC, where they are not, like the classroom is at 58 degrees. I talked to you about the school that it has a cold classroom. Would that qualify to use the ESSER fund or no?
Our focus is ventilation. The heating and the cooling would be something that we'd look at secondary. And
okay.
From the ventilation piece that we got from CDC and ODE guidance is what we're targeting with the ESSER.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Just looking at the next item. I don't have the agenda in front of me, Aaron. But we've got, the status of the lessons learned.
Okay, cool. I will open it up here. So I don't actually have a whole lot to say on this topic other than, so we did a presentation on it at the October meeting, and I'll scroll down here to those lessons learned. Kind of hard to get it all on one screen here, but so this is on our website. We've posted the lessons learned on our website, and I can go through these again here, but really, just kind of in summary, we are working to incorporate every one of these lessons learned that we have. I guess it's just a matter of how we want to report on that moving forward. Maybe I guess that's the discussion topic here, right?
It is, and I think, thanks for providing it and making it publicly available. Really, the status report on the lessons learned was just really, if they're available, letting everybody know that they're out there for review. And then, as we're getting into the new business and talking about looking towards the next bond, if they're out there and they're hanging out there for the community and for the next committee to see, we can build off of this and integrate that to the next work. So I don't think that we have much discussion on this. Reaching back to the committee or to Sunita or Eric, do you guys have any questions about what we found or what the district found and reported out on about the lessons learned kind of moving forward?
No, I mean, I've been on the committee for almost the whole time, so I kind of lived it, the whole cycle. I mean, I came in right when we Mountainside was having inflationary, huge inflationary pressures. So yeah, I remember this.
Gotcha.
The only thing I can think about is like we're in a really inflationary environment now, even worse than before. Maybe is that something that I guess doesn't affect the current bond because there's only a couple $1 million more of work to do, so it really can't hurt you very bad, right? Because we're at the final finish line, but it could hurt what you have on the next slate, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is one of our things here. It's item number 2 on the lessons learned. And so as it relates to the next bond, we're going through it a lot right now on specifically for the Beaverton High School project, the replacement project, and then for the Raleigh Hills replacement project. So we're spending a lot of time upfront doing that due diligence work, making sure we've got a really good understanding of the scope, and then really trying to capture those market conditions and the uncertainty as best we can. So building contingencies in those budgets, looking at comparable projects that are bidding here, like recently, to see just where the trends are going on big projects, and hopefully capturing that in the bond package that we have going forward.
I have a question on that specific one. I just got back from the last design advisory committee for Raleigh Hills School. And one of the presentations was on the estimate. And the question I had was, what input did they have, since I've followed along on the conceptual design, other than an approximate square footage? I didn't see that there were detailed scope to take that. Now, incredibly, the two people estimating it came within a fraction of a % of each other. So they must, either that's coincidence or we're doing something right. But I was wondering, as you're developing conceptual design, how at this point, and with the bond issue coming up so good, what kind of confidence do you have in estimates at this point?
Yeah, great question. And then certainly there's an art to it. At the conceptual level, you don't have detailed drawings. You're not doing detailed takeoffs of quantities. You don't even know what the materials are yet, right? So they do a uniformat estimate, and they do, so how do I explain this? So they do estimates based on assemblies. So what they'll do is, they know the total cost per square foot of the building, or they know the square footage of the building. They know the size of the site. They know generally what elementary school building costs per square foot. They can look at schools that we've built recently. They can look at other ones that have been built recently. They're using that parametric data on cost estimating to determine what's the best guess cost per square foot for these new buildings. So, these ones are just, is it $600 a square feet? Is it $700 a square feet? How and why do we think that this is an appropriate cost estimate for this building? That's really what it involves. And then, as you transition from a conceptual design into actual design, they'll do what's called a target value design, and they'll have a certain cost per square foot allocated to each of the different systems. Our structure should cost this, our envelope should cost this, our mechanical system should cost this, and they design to each of those subsystem buckets as they move forward.
And that may explain why the two estimators were so close at this point, is they're working off of the square footage kind of thing. When we went on that tour of Mountainside, I posed a question to the project manager. and I can't remember what the question was, but her response was, I think I was asking her about what were the biggest challenges you had in building this? And she alluded that they were in nailing down the scope. And we happened to be in that incredible room that had commercial restaurant equipment, which I thought was unique. But her point was, she used that as an example, that nobody had any idea. They couldn't define what they wanted in this space until the last minute. And that's why the costs overran it. And exploring that a little bit, whether it was the big cost things happened with the specialty rooms, like the woodworking shop, it wasn't a home ec room. It was more preparing people to.
Yeah, the culinary classroom you're talking about.
And all incredible facilities. There was a lecture room that was special, and there was the stage, and I can't remember what they did with the stage, but I guess in bringing that up, if you're trying to develop more accurate scope, it seems like at an early point, even in conceptual design, you might identify what are those special rooms that could really affect the cost and try to get that nailed down, either in specification or expectation early on, so that, like Mountainside, you don't get caught up at the last minute.
So, Dick, this is Carl, and I couldn't agree with you more, and I don't think the team could agree with you more. One of the factors, though, too, when we went and started with design at Mountainside, and where the politics were going in the state, they evolved and significantly evolved, because when we started with Mountainside, CTE funding was not a thing. Corporate tax was coming online, and we caught wind of that at the very beginning of our final design of Mountainside. And so that's where kind of that juncture of, I'm not gonna say confusion, but it was a juncture of, okay, wait, what is it we should be doing here? And what program should we be capitalizing on if we're going to continue, if we're going to begin to have this infusion of funding come from the state? So that's kind of where that nexus occurred for Mountainside. There were a lot of unknowns at the time, and that was, and I think honestly, the team pivoted beautifully at the time, at the right time, to make those adjustments, so that we didn't have to make those adjustments after the building was built. We were able to make some program changes pretty quickly in that model. Aaron's team and SORT did a marvelous job of being able to do that, but Leslie was absolutely right. That was one of the challenges very early on in the building of Mountainside.
For Beaverton, we know the same thing will happen to a certain degree, although we do have more information at this point, but we have set aside space and budget to account for those additional programs that might come up, or that probably will come up during the project.
I'm glad to hear that.
Just one other point on that, kind of germane to the topic of escalation. Just as we're looking forward, one thing we might consider, as a district and community, to kind of close the gap on any kind of we don't want to say confusion that people might have as cost change, is to just, as we're moving forward, to kind of consider documenting what the assumptions were when it comes to escalation and the kind of the date or the vintage of that estimate, so that if we move forward, we're able to say that we have a new estimate that came out 5 years after the fact, and it had a much different escalation trajectory. That might just be something that, if we're looking at that before we're going into the next bond, just for the community, it helps to kind of paint the picture a little bit and help people to understand why things change, and kind of cuts questions off before they really need to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
So in case of Mountainside, was it the structure or the land that was the biggest driver of cost increase? It was the land, was it not? And the remediation of the land?
No.
It was several things. It was,
the structure.
Similar. I mean, it can be really boiled down to the lesson learned I have here. It was the initial budget and scope was not adequate. There wasn't enough detail and estimating that went into that initial budget for the building and for the land.
Because what I'm trying to subdivide here is because if you're looking at Beaverton, land wouldn't be that much of an issue as it is in Mountainside, right? It would be the
Right.
structure that would be the driver.
Yep,
So
absolutely. Site work will be definitely a much lower percentage of the total project cost. But on the other hand, we got a lot of existing weird conditions there to deal with. We got a big structure that's definitely asbestos contaminated that we're going to have to deal with. But absolutely, it should be a lot cheaper than Mountainside as far as site work.
Thanks.
Excellent. Well, thanks to the district for making those available and posting those out on the website. That's a big help, and we can take a look at that, and hopefully the next bond committee can take a look at that too and make use of it. So thank you. Moving on to the next item of business. As a committee, we were looking at this and hoping to kind of close the gap on what the expectations of the board would be as far as closing out the bond, and then also looking at the remaining meetings that we have. And then when it comes to that actual final closeout, what are those elements that we as a community should be really focusing on and presenting back to both the community and to the school board come the end of this summer. So with that in mind, can I turn this over to you, Josh and Aaron, to kind of walk us through what your thoughts are here?
Right. So thank you, Brad. So we have put together the closeout plan. We're going to provide a couple of options too, and these are just options right now, just some things for the committee to consider when we get to the next couple of slides. But what you see up there, current schedule right now, what we're looking at for the rest of this school year, we've got March 30th currently planned for our next meeting after tonight. There is some consideration, Brad, and we can talk more offline about maybe moving that earlier due to some scheduling conflicts, and so we'll work that with you. But essentially 3 meetings for the rest of the school year. In terms of what the closeout report content would look like, you can see some of the bullets that are up there that we are looking at. So a summary financial report, essentially what we have right now in our document. So if there's anything specific that the committee would like to look at, something that we can get that input and provide that in a closeout report. So is there anything more in that program report that John just covered that the committee would like to look at? We would definitely be open to that. There are goals and priorities that we have identified in this bond, and that's something that we would look at. We've talked about that before. They're in our quarterly reports, the BAC quarterly reports to the board. We would talk about those goals, what the priorities were, how they were met, anything that wasn't met, and we would identify that in that report. Key projects, there are projects that we talked about. Mountainside would be one of them. We could talk about our large new schools, rebuilds, and put those details into the report that just capture what lessons learned, cost overruns, inflation, capturing that for some of the key projects. And then realized opportunities. What did we find here in this bond that can carry us over for planning into the next bond? So that's in summary kind of what we would have in terms of a closeout report. I think Sunita has a question.
Just a suggestion, and maybe you're already going to do this. You did a presentation to us for the next bond and how the estimated $723 million will be divided up into different buckets like modernization, technology, and all the different projects. And I see that that's estimated. Can you now we have the actual numbers for 2014 bond. I would be interested in seeing how the money was spent with the old bond, in those type of buckets, so that we can see, okay, this is where the money went.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep. No, absolutely. Thank you for that feedback.
Is this a report from the staff to this board? Is it? Who's going to prepare the report and who's the audience?
Right. The report, that's a great point, Dick, and I'll clarify that. That's a report from us, our district staff, to the committee. So
Okay.
When we get to the options, I'll talk about what quarterly reports are due from the BAC to the board. But in terms of us reporting it out to you, here's the recommendations that we're looking at to the Bond Accountability Committee, taking that report. And then what I envision is that the committee would then do their final report at some point in time to the school board.
Okay, that helps a lot. You probably have covered it here, but what I would look for, and I think most of the committee members would look for, was some kind of a checklist that indicates this is what was promised in 2014 with the bond. Here's what we accomplished, so that there's a direct correlation, and possibly, as Sunita has mentioned, is have some dollar values. Although I don't think when you did the bond in 2014, you attributed dollars to the various projects, but the real key is, what did we promise and what did we deliver?
Great point. Definitely noted, and we can add that to the list.
And I think we've got a question from Cheryl as well. Cheryl, did I see you with your hand up?
Oh, thank you, Brad. Dick hit on part of what I wanted to figure out is who is the audience, and you may be thinking about doing this anyway, but it might be important to also have a really solid executive summary that is a readable, highly readable document for the community. So not only are we doing our job and preparing this final report for the board, but it can be a useful tool for communication with the community, keeping it higher level, really focusing on the summary aspects of the last 8 years worth of work.
Thank you
Great.
for that, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Tom or Renu, anything from your perspectives as well?
Nothing here.
No, nothing.
And Eric, just wanted to make sure if there's anything else from your perspective too that we might be considering, because this will be something that we'll be reporting back to the board, and we want to make sure that it scratches the itch as far as what the school board's going to need.
I think it'll be good to recap it, because I remember a lot of the problems was at the beginning, of like what you expected something to be built for, and it costs a lot more. So I think, there's a huge effort made to kind of make inflationary values out for 5 years on all the projects. And then once that was aligned well, then, the team just pretty much nailed them all and got all the projects done, plus more extra with the bond premium, so that's a good summary to have. Like, in the end, yeah, with the premiums and stuff, you actually did more than the project. I think you did more than you promised to do. So, extra stuff was done too. So it'd be nice to have that as like the extra special stuff where the premium got us more stuff for the school district. By the way,
one thing I would like to throw out there, that's a great idea, but I do want to make sure everybody knows that Shelly's team has done a great job of really capturing a lot of this information already, and a ton of it is available on our website. And so she'll demo the website for the next bond in a little bit, but alongside that is the website for the current bond, which really has most of this information already on it. But I do understand formatting it into an executive summary type report.
Terrific. And as we're looking at this, just looking at the schedule too, not many meetings really before we kind of get to the end of this. Were we imagining that, from the district's perspective, we would be receiving that kind of before the June 1st meeting, or what is there I guess an earmarked time frame when the BAC would be reporting back to the school board? I think that'd be helpful for the committee to know.
Right. No, great. And so I talked about options at the beginning. And so Aaron, if you can advance the next slide here. The one thing that I wanted to just kind of go back, I think it was 2 meetings ago, we had talked about potentially a transition of this committee into the next bond. And it was the consideration that we put out there. We're looking for some feedback. So in thinking about that, if option one that's in front of on the screen here is essentially what would happen now if we get us to the end of the committee's term at the end of the school year. So there are the remaining meetings that are up there. Brad, you briefed quarter 2, quarter 3 for 2021 to the school board on November 15th. So the next quarterly reports that the BAC would give to the school board are up there. So for the way we kind of look at it from a schedule perspective, not trying to, put the schedule in front of you and say, this is what we're going to do, but just the way we looked at it, the Q4 of last year, Q1 of 2022, we look at that report from the BAC to the board on April 25th. And then the final Q2 of 2022 would be a presentation to the school board on June 20th. At that point would be that final closeout presentation, kind of that summary that we just talked about of all those different elements of the report. So looking back, doing the backwards planning, we would look at getting our report to you in enough time. And so I think back probably right after the April 27th meeting would kind of be something that we'd start to put together, get it to you so that you would have time to be able to look at it, get to the June 1st meeting so that we can potentially talk about that as an agenda item, fine tune that as needed, and then have you be prepared to give your final brief to the board on June 20th. So again, this is actually how we would currently move forward if we had no changes. We did not transition to the new bond with this current committee.
And then looking at our options.
And then, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, my reaction, I think it's really good to lay this out, but if you're getting your report to us right before the June meeting, we have to use it to do the final presentation to the school board on the 20th of June. That's going to be really a crash effort in the last 3 or 4 weeks there.
Dick, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. I'd look to get it to you probably after that April 27th meeting, and then we would talk about, the committee would have time, we'd talk about it at the June 1st meeting.
Okay, so we might need some kind of virtual review and feedback between the board soon after getting that report, rather than waiting until the 1st of June, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. And whatever process works best, I understand that there would be some time to be able to review it, provide comment, and get that back. If we need to have additional meetings to be able to support that, we're open to that.
One other thing, and I'm not sure how this fits in there, but it occurred to me actually in a conversation I had with Brad a few weeks ago, that it might be of value to the next bond accountability committee for the next bond for us to do a little lessons learned or something. I don't know how many of us would continue on and how many new people you would have, but I mean, Tom in particular has so much history and knowledge that identifying some key points, some lessons learned for how our bond accountability committee has operated to benefit the committee for the next bond, I think would be really valuable for the district.
Absolutely.
And sorry, I was gonna say, and Josh had another option too that he was going to present too with this is kind of, there were a couple options that could potentially serve as ways to kind of get us to that final point here, and then we can have some discussion, I think, after that.
Right. So thank you, Brad. So for option 2, Aaron, if you can advance next slide. Again, we have talked about a couple of meetings ago. We value your input, we value the feedback and support that we get as we wrap up this bond. We talked about the next bond, the interest in the next bond. So what you have in front of you would be a transition to the new bond with this current committee, building upon the corporate knowledge that we have currently on board and carrying the members forward to the next bond. And so that we would have that stability in the committee, and then look at potentially bringing we would bring a new committee in summer of 2023. So again, just a consideration, something that we wanted to brief to you. So we would continue with the remaining scheduled meetings the rest of this year. Same quarterly report that we talked about in terms of what the BAC would brief to the school board. But at the in the summer, we would look at kind of an interim closeout report from the BAC to the school board. So we would look at wrapping up those elements that we talked about in that final report, but call it an interim report to get us to this point in time. And then Brad would make that presentation to the school board in June and talk about here's kind of where we're at in terms of the closeout of this bond interim report. The committee, we would have to get the board's approval, but the committee would then transition. We're looking to transition into the next bond. We've got some tentative dates up there for the next school year in 22-23. So those are just tentative, just some ideas that we threw out there, August, September. You can see the dates that are up there. And then the actual final closeout of the 2014 bond would be done in the summer of 2023. So there would be some of that interim closeout report in June of 2022. This committee would transition into the next bond, but the way I kind of envisioned the BAC meetings focus would be on the 2014 bond, but we could still talk about the 2022 bond. Could we'd have startup new projects? I'm sure there'd be interest from the committee to hear that. And of course, we would, at the last bullet there, we would require that school board approval to do that, allow us to transition this committee over an additional year.
And the opportunity there really is to kind of leverage the committee's experience on the previous bond as kind of like a shoulder solution while the board brings together a new committee, and then there's a little bit more overlap of kind of knowledge between the committees.
Right, absolutely. So those are the two options that we have. And
from a transition standpoint, I really like what you're proposing in option 2. It seems much smoother and would work better. Kind of a tangential comment on it that would extend the meetings into 2022. I've got a observation that in the last couple of meetings, we've sure had a lot of people that haven't been able to attend, and I don't remember that ever happening before. I don't know if it's because we're towards the end of this, or if it's the Zoom meetings, or if people are losing interest. But to carry out this transition meeting, I think we need some kind of commitment for people to make these meetings. Certainly we would. And I think that that's something too, as a committee, that we can touch on and make sure that everybody's still available. And if not, then we can bring that back to the district for awareness if we needed to get any to make any transitions. But I think I'm unaware of anybody no longer being able to participate at this time. Well, I think you could give the option if people don't want to continue, they can opt out. Because I look back, I've been here for 3 years. I missed one meeting, and I knew way early I was going to miss it because I was out of town. And I told Cheryl, and she made me feel bad, saying, "We really wish you were here." Thanks, Dick. Speaking of Cheryl, could you join us? It looks like you have a question.
Yeah, or maybe a comment. I'm wondering with option 2, which has a lot of merit in my opinion, if it makes sense to bring on the new members for the new back, maybe 2 meetings before the end of our term. So there's actual integration of the old board with the new board. And then there's that passing of the baton, and the new members take it from there.
I agree with that.
Renu or Tom, any thoughts from your perspective as well?
No, I agree with it 100%. The last couple of comments, Dick, that you've brought up, this problem of people having conflicts at the last minute or even in advance, that was brought up at least 2 years ago. I know, because I was the one that brought it up, that we were having very close to not having quorums at some of the meetings. And I don't know what solution there is to it. At the time, it was kind of set aside and said it'll work out because we're adding new members. But I agree with you, Dick. it hasn't worked out because of new members to the point where we've got everyone on board at every meeting. And I do think that's an important thing. If there's a commitment made, and I realize things come up in this is, I was just thinking about this as this meeting started tonight. This is 9 years for me because I was on the community involvement committee that did all the studies for the current bond, and then transitioned from the community involvement team to the bond accountability team. And like you, Dick, I can remember all of my meetings, and I guess someone could prove me wrong, but I don't think, I think I missed one meeting in 9 years now. And that's not patting myself on the back. It's just saying that if there's an interest, if there's a commitment, we need buy-in with it. And the handoff, I agree 100%. There should be discussions about what's happened in the last 8 years. What were some of the challenges? I can remember some very contentious meetings early on during especially the high school, and it had to do with all kinds of things. But the single biggest thing, and you've all been talking about it since the beginning of this meeting, was estimating. The numbers that were given to the public to vote on the current bond. This goes back to late 2013, 2014. Those numbers, we were told after the fact, were numbers from up to 10 years before that, which I know at the time floored me, and that came up in many, many meetings as we went from we needed $147 million increase for the high school, or whatever it was, 47 million, I believe. But all of those things can be discussed and either handed off to, or at least the information given to whoever's going to serve on the next Bond Accountability Committee, because they're important. And it gets down to this, and Eric, you make a good point. We gained a lot because of bond premiums, things that go on in the financial world that you aren't able to project them out. But having been in this business and this type of, I guess, looking at the accountability for 30 some years, I can tell you that there are other cycles where when we maybe go to the market, we not only wouldn't get a bond premium, but we could get hit with a cost instead of a premium. So they're just things that they need to be discussed, and some of them anticipated. And I guess I've probably said too much there, but that's just my feelings at this point in time.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate that. Rennie, I wanted to make sure we had space for you as well.
Yeah, I just think if we are going with option 2, an overlap meeting, as Cheryl suggested, would be a good idea to sort of exchange ideas and exchange experience, and make sure that the new committee learns about what, I mean, does not have to go through reinvent the wheels, so to speak. And so that's my only comment here.
Thank you, Renu. From Sunita or from Eric, any other thoughts or kind of discussion to add to the conversation?
Do you want to go first, Eric?
Yeah, my only thought, I guess I'll go real quick. I mean, you know, on this one, also, like, I'd love to have a lot of people who are on this BAC go on the next one, because I don't think there's any exclusion just because you did 9 years of great support like Tom done on this. I mean, I think, you know, it'd be good to have those pillars on the next BAC for the build out of Beaverton High School and other ones. So I hope a lot of you guys are on the bridge Brad and you guys are, Tom, commitment, all this, and Dick. I think you know, we would definitely pick you again. So, so I hope you want to do that on the next one. Not only have continuity, but go all the way with the next one, and then bring in new people too as well. So that's the only thought I had.
Yeah, I totally agree with every one of you. We would love to have the committed members of this committee to come to the next year, and so that people like me too, I'm very new, I can learn from you all, your suggestions and comments. And it would be nice to have the new members come in sometime in between so that they learn from the old group too. And I had a question. You said that it's an interim closeout in the second option. Will we still get all the financial reports that you are providing in option 1 with the option 2 so that we can see? At what point do we start using the new bond money? Is it?
It would, well, the financial report, the interim closeout, Sunita, would just be focused on the 14 bond. I mean, again, with the committee and the bridge, we'd have to look at, we're talking about the 14 bond. The 22 bond is started. Here's what that summary looks like. We're also looking at revamping that report. And so some of the feedback that we'd like to, get from, the BAC. But to me, there would still be that separation because we have to keep them separate, in terms of the financials. But it would be part of something that we could talk about in our meetings. Does that answer your question?
And when do we actually start using the new bond money? At what point?
Well, first off, let's make sure we get it passed. That's
yeah.
So that's a great question, Sunita. And so if we have a passage in May of 2022, we would probably not be looking for the first sale of bonds, first layer bonds, probably July to September, in that time frame would be the first sale. And we're required to take a portion and sell a portion of the bonds for us to be qualified for the state grant that we're also interested in receiving.
Okay.
And that has to be done within the first 6 months of passage of a bond.
Okay. All right. Makes sense. Thank you.
Great conversation. And I guess, I should have addressed this before, but really what we were hoping to kind of present to the or have feedback from the committee is what option would we prefer. So I guess with that in mind, we should really, I guess, call the question of as far as voting on these options, option 1 or option 2. We have a quorum. Luckily, we do have a deep bench. We have 9 folks on the committee, but we have 5 here, so we can actually make the call on which of these we would like to pursue. And then that would give us time, if it were to be one of the options, that if we needed to coordinate with the school board, we could do that as well. So is there a motion to vote on one of these options? I guess kind of going to Robert's Rules of Order here.
Brad, we have a couple of amendments on the table. Are we going to incorporate them into option 2? Are we going to make the motion and then separately add amendment language to the options?
Cheryl, I guess maybe before, to make this a little bit easier, is if we can throw out there what the amendment would be to the option 2 that would make it acceptable to the board or to the BAC.
I think one is what Cheryl recommended, is that we get the new board members on long enough so that there is an actual transition over several meetings to be able to provide that continuity.
So planned overlap. And
did I characterize that correctly, Cheryl?
Yes, that's great, Tom. And then do we need to put anything in here regarding Eric's comments about 2014 back committee members being eligible to apply for the 2022 bond membership, committee membership?
Cheryl, this is Carl. I don't believe you need to put any clause in there because anybody from our community is eligible to reapply and re-up. Simply because if you've been a current participant doesn't exclude you from future participation.
Good to know. Thank you.
So we're hearing the overlap to make sure that the bond 2014 committee overlaps the 2022 bond committee. And could we say at least by 2 meetings? I think that that would be a recommendation to make sure that there's some kind of overlap, you know, enough meetings, if that's acceptable to the committee. I'd say holler if I'm saying something that you disagree with. And then the other point to Sunita's comment there was just a clarification on the closeout of the financials, that we still would be seeing the kind of the 2014 financials to date, but then the final closeout due to kind of some of the carryover projects would come at that final meeting in 2023. Is there anything else, committee, that that I didn't put in there?
I would even add at least more. I mean, more is good too, like 2 meetings. I think even like 6 meetings would be good too. I mean, we don't have to, more the better, you know, like we can start looking for people who wants to be in for the new bond, because I don't know how much they can learn in 2 meetings. It would be nice to have more. It was a good point, Cheryl, you know, to have that. I mean, I don't know what others feel about it. So.
I think the more that we have as far as overlap, you know, they can pick our brains and take all that knowledge from us. I think having a minimum kind of allows us to make sure that we at least get some continuity if there's any delay.
I don't know that it's something that has to be put in here as an amendment, but there's stuff to be learned in the meetings themselves. But again, from 9 years experience, we had a lot of breakout sessions, call them what you want. Carl, you remember some of them. Eric, I'm sure you remember them. But we were getting together in some of the trailers at the headquarters for some of our meetings in one of the early hot summers when we were just getting this started. So I think just with the idea that not everything's going to be able to be handed off by somebody attending these meetings. Hopefully we're not doing them by Zoom meetings at that point in time, and it's a lot easier to talk about things and pass things on if there's an actual meeting going on. But I think if we just all thought about the fact that as part of the whole bond committee and the boards, what they want as an end result, that we just keep in mind that if we have to do an extra session between meetings, call it what you want, an education session or just a information exchange session. We agreed early on, 8+ years ago, that we would have to have some sessions like that just to get caught up. We didn't even have any formats when we started this in 2014 specific to the detail that's on option 1 or on option 2. So just again, that it doesn't have to be an amendment, and whoever typed that in, that's great. Those are some things we incorporate. But if we commit to, again, working on these committees, I think, like our members, whether they're board members or administration, you guys have to attend a lot of these meetings that come up that may not be on some schedule that you signed up for when you took your position, but you show up, you do the job, and you get it done. So I think we have that same obligation as committee members. Whatever it takes to do the handoff, we have to be prepared to do. If we're not, then we just don't, we shouldn't be taking part, because I guess from experience, it's a long road with 8-year bond, and there's a lot of things that that are learned and have to be, I believe, have to be handed off to the next group or carried over by all of us, whoever's on the committee. So again, I get too wordy with all of this. That's just my thoughts.
Well taken, Tom. And with that in mind, do we have I guess a motion to with the two options that are on the table? Is there a motion to vote on option 1 or option 2 right now?
And I move that we vote on option 2 as the way to go forward.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Second from Cheryl. So now we have any discussion? Any further discussion?
Just 2 points, and this doesn't need to be part of the option, but one is I like the idea of breakout sessions as long as they're focused on some specific kinds of things, and maybe it doesn't require everybody to be there. Otherwise, it's just a regular meeting. But I think that'd be very valuable, not only from getting things forward and helping the transition, but just in team building, getting to know one another, which I think would help the board going forward, or the committee going forward. The second thing is that I do believe if we had everybody write down a few of the things that they thought were of value for the committee to do, and I'm thinking of kind of a committee lessons learned kind of thing. It wouldn't have to be real formal, but I too think that by pulling those things out of all the committee members, we could come up with a pretty good set of points to operate from in the future. Again, I don't think this needs to be part of an amendment, but, and one other thing, I think Brad, you should probably think about a way to nicely ask all of the existing committee members if they want to continue or not, and give them the option to opt out if they are losing interest.
Thanks, Dick. Taking on the check-in with the committee members on looking at potential involvements just as background for this, and then also I'm going to take that as an action item for me to coordinate with you all about the lessons learned that we can provide, and that's outside of the motion here. But yes, we certainly can provide that, and I'll take that on. Is there any other discussion from the committee members that you wanted to have right now? If not, we can move to vote. Okay, I don't see any other discussion. So all those in favor, we can see it by hand or virtual hand, whatever might work there. For option 2, that is.
How do you do a virtual hand?
You can just raise your hand. And
raise your hand, it'll show on the screen.
So we've got unanimous. So motion carries. We'd like to work with you all to pursue option 2 so that we can have that shoulder committee to help us ease into the 2022 bond. So I think that would help the community, and definitely appreciate everybody's comments on that and conversation.
So Brad, our next steps on this would be Sunita and Eric to take it to a board meeting, and it would be need to cycle through 2 terms of a board meeting, which is not a problem. We got plenty of time for that. They would carry forward your recommendation as a BAC, and we will prepare those documents for Sunita and Eric to carry forward into the board meeting. It wouldn't be the next board meeting, which is a work session, to be the 2 following. So there'd be business meetings.
Terrific, Carl. Thanks for the clarification there, and thanks for the heavy lifting. we get to be the people who offer it up, and you carry it across the finish line. So thanks so much. As far as the next item on the agenda that we had around this, and sorry, was there any other concerns or clarifying questions that the board had right now of the district staff? Okay. And I know I jumped the first one, which was the COVID impacts, and I apologize about skipping over the agenda there, but did we want to go back and talk about the COVID impacts, or do we want to make our way into the remaining meetings or the kind of, there was that new item of business? Actually, if we could, I would recommend that we just go back and just do a quick wrap on the COVID impacts, just so that we could understand those before we head into the 2022 bond.
Yeah, for sure. So I can cover that real quick. I don't actually have a slide or anything prepared. And it's kind of just more of the same as far as really what we're seeing is a lot of impacts with materials and supply chains. And the hardest part has been not, there's cost escalation for sure. And that we can deal with to some extent, but we're not able to get firm commitments on delivery dates on anything, especially the roofing products and like HVAC units and stuff. Here, I'll turn off screen share. So for example, we're doing the VOS Classroom Edition this summer. That project we have had under contract for quite a while, several months. We've had the new HVAC unit for that project ordered for several months. And we're hearing from them now that they're not going to guarantee any delivery date whatsoever. They're going to, try their best to get it to us when we need it, which is, around June or so. But they won't guarantee anything until after September of next year. And that's tough to deal with on projects like this because, fortunately in Oregon, September is pretty mild and we can come up with temporary means of dealing with that if it were to be delayed. But it makes it tough to plan these projects when there's not any commitment, especially for roofs. Roofing is actually harder than HVAC because you need to have the roofing insulation and materials in order to do the project in the appropriate time, which is over the summer, and in the appropriate order. And we've had several roofing projects that we've delayed. We've bumped out until next summer. So I mentioned McKinley already, but there's also projects at Nancy Riles and Shoals Heights that we're moving to the following summer, largely because the materials. Also has to do with just contractors being available and everything. Staffing is honestly an issue too. The labor market's kind of indirectly been impacted by COVID. There's a lot of work out there right now, a lot of vacancies, which really just kind of slows things down overall. I will mention this is sort of an aside, but John Irwin here, this will be his last BAC meeting too. So job conditions are such that there's a favorable market out there right now. And he's found a good position with a company locally. So congratulations to John, but we'll miss him. And, maybe it's a good example of things are getting stretched real thin all over the place right now.
Hoping to just slide under the radar tonight, but
and Aaron stole my thunder. Yeah, John has had over 7.5 years here with the district. So started out as our cost accountant. You are our construction program manager. I know I'm missing a position, John, but thank you for your dedication and service to our district, and we will miss you.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun. I've had a great time doing the work that we do and serving the community. So I will, miss these meetings and the, free dinners that we got when we were in person. But excited for the new opportunity. So sorry to detract from the current subject.
But John, you can be a future member of this committee because you'll no longer be an employee.
This is true. Yeah, my dad has already nudged me and been like, hey, you can run for a school board now too. So
Hey, Aaron, on the roofing materials thing, if we spec the materials, could the district buy the materials or put an order in, a procurement order in early, even before you've selected a contractor? And then when you get the contractor, as part of their scope, it would say materials supplied?
Yeah, that's a possibility. It comes with a lot of logistical challenges though, too. And risk, I would add. Really the best way we have found to deal with that is really just to get the construction contract in place as early as possible, because we really want those contractors to be responsible for purchasing the materials, making sure that it's the right quantities and everything, and being responsible for shipping and storage and all that stuff. And it gets complicated when you mix it up like that.
Sure, I understand that.
Any other thoughts or concerns from the board, from Renu, Tom, Cheryl?
I have a question regarding the VOS classroom edition. So if I remember correctly, those additions are due to the availability of additional teachers. Isn't that correct? So you're trying to reduce the ratio of students to teachers. So
Correct.
is that permanent, the increase in teaching staff availability, or is that going to go away?
Reno, I wish my crystal ball were clear on that. Organ funding is always an interesting one. So for the foreseeable future, we don't see a reduction in staffing, but that always has a potential for change given economics, or if in fact we have our next levy may not pass. That levy purchases approximately 300 teachers that we add to our system as well. So there's a lot of factors that come in between that, not only state funding, but local funding that comes through a levy.
So the reason I asked was how it would play into this postponement of the classroom edition because of lack of materials. Because if the teachers are going away, then there's no point in actually adding classrooms.
So we're not going to postpone that one at this point. It's full steam ahead.
Okay.
So that project's full steam ahead, and we have no plans of reducing the number of teachers for VOS. There are no recommendations of reduction of classroom sizes for next year in next year's budget. Reno.
Okay, thanks.
Sunita and Eric would be very interested in that topic.
All right, with that in mind, and thanks for giving us that little overview, Aaron. We definitely appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely.
So, sorry, I lost my audio there. And just moving on to the next item of business, Josh, you were going to talk to us with Shelley about the kind of the recap of the bond work that you've done, and kind of with an eye on the future.
Absolutely. I'll turn it over to Shelley. She's got, she'll do a screen share, but the work that our communications team has done here over the past couple of months has been phenomenal. And you'll get to get a sense of that and get a quick overview. So Shelley, I'll just turn it over to you.
Sure.
And I will add one thing before Shelley speaks, is this is probably the best materials I have ever seen in preparation for a bond. Shelley's team has been magnificent. And honestly, it's so thorough and it's deep, and we have it 5 months before we're actually going, and it's on the ballot. I mean, I've never seen this level of preparation. So Shelley, kudos to you and your team.
Well, thank you. Now we have so much to live up to after that intro. But thanks, guys. And it's certainly not done in a vacuum. Our team works really closely with Josh and Carl and Aaron and all the folks in facilities to make sure that we have accurate information. So I do appreciate that. I'm going to share my screen with you. I don't do this very often, so if I screw it up, it's my fault. Hold on one second. I want to make sure I'm able to show you some videos as well. Can everyone see my screen?
Looks like it.
Yes, okay.
Yep.
So this is the new bond website for the 2020 proposed bond. You'll notice that it's at the same address as the old bond website. And I'll just make a note here because I know you're all very fond of the 2014-2022 bond. it didn't go away. So if you clicked here, you'd still be able to go back to the previous bond program, and you could click on any of these icons and it still lists all the projects that were done on that school at that school. So it didn't go anywhere. We've just shifted it to the background. So as we page down, these gray boxes here are just redirects, so I won't touch on those right now. But there's basically a brief intro here about what the bond would entail. And then it comes to an overview video that I would like to play for you. It was produced in both English and Spanish. All our videos are in both languages. So let's take a look at the bond video. It's not too long.
In May 2022, voters will decide on a new proposed 30-year bond that, if passed, would raise about $723 million. The proposed bond is estimated to initially cost taxpayers approximately $2.34 per $1,000 of assessed value and decline over time. That's an increase of approximately 25 cents per $1,000 of assessed value over the current tax rate. For a homeowner with an average assessed property value of $303,000, that's an increase of about $76 per year. If the bond passes, how would the district prioritize projects? Well, it started in 2019 when the district hired an outside consultant to do a comprehensive facility condition assessment of all BSD properties. The consultant scored schools and district buildings on seismic readiness, age, condition, and the amount of deferred maintenance. Then last February, the district asked you to fill out a survey that further prioritized the needs. That all resulted in a list of proposed projects that fall into 6 main categories. First, modernization at 44 of our 53 schools. Things like office relocations to increase security, classroom improvements, new playgrounds, and synthetic turf fields at some high schools. It also includes 2 school rebuilds, Beaverton High School, which was constructed in 1916, and Raleigh Hills, constructed in 1927. Second, seismic improvements. Take a look at this graph. 13 of our 53 schools currently meet or nearly meet the district's goal for damage control, leaving 40 of our schools that don't meet the district standard for earthquake readiness. If passed, the proposed bond would fund phase 1 of that work, starting with our older middle schools, Cedar Park, Five Oaks, Highland Park, Meadow Park, Mountain View, and Whitford. Other schools would be addressed in future proposed bonds. Third, technology. During the early days of the pandemic, our students used their school-issued devices for remote learning. The replacement cost for these devices is around $27.4 million and would include 2 rounds of Chromebooks for high school and 1 round of Chromebooks and iPads for middle and elementary schools. If the proposed bond does not pass, the district would not fund new one-to-one devices for student use unless general funds were allocated, potentially impacting funding for staffing and other programs. The proposed bond also would cover more than $16 million worth of network and infrastructure upgrades, as well as extra devices and parts. Fourth, if passed, the proposed bond would fund $120 million worth of deferred maintenance at most schools, projects like roof replacements and HVAC upgrades. Fifth, classroom additions at Oak Hills, Sato, and Stoller. And the 6th category, security and other equipment, including security cameras at all schools, card readers at high schools, and new buses. If the proposed bond passes, the district would receive an additional $8 million in state grant money through the Oregon School Capital Improvement Matching Program. If the proposed bond doesn't pass, BSD would not receive the grant. For more information about the district's long-range facility plan and seismic study, please visit our bond website. There, you also can see exactly what projects are proposed for individual schools. If the proposed bond does not pass, projects would not go forward and the new tax rate would not be implemented. Still have questions? Feel free to submit them on that same webpage by hovering over the question mark.
So that is the overview video. And then as you page down, you'll come to those buckets that we just saw. And I'm just going to open up one of them so you get an idea. Here's where people could kind of do a deeper dive into that particular category. So here's modernization. There's a fuller description of what projects qualify as modernization. There's some photos, and then the Beaverton High School rebuild and the Raleigh Hills rebuild are both part of the modernization bucket. So they're listed there. But we have sort of this deeper dive into all those different categories. And as I page back, we go down to this section where we break out all the proposed projects by school. So for example, if we go into our middle schools and you wanted to see what is planned at Cedar Park, for example, in the next bond, it'll open up a page and you'll see what they're getting in all those different buckets. I should mention that in addition to the website, we've also produced posters, large posters that sort of give the overview of what's happening district-wide. But then each of the schools have a smaller poster, which is a version of what you're seeing here that will be hung at the front entrance of the school. My team is doing that this week and next week. So each school will have a district poster and its own individual poster as well. Oh, one thing I should point out there, obviously we have some schools that are brand new, and if we open up, say, Tumwater, Tumwater would be an example of a school that doesn't have a long list of things because they have a brand spanking new school. So as a reminder to folks about what happened at the school previously in the past bond, you'll see there's a section down here that says completed 2014 bond projects. And if I clicked on this link right here, it would bring me to the Tumwater page for the last bond. So it's kind of a way to remind people what was done in the past. And then as we continue to go down, there's an explanation here about the finances and giving people some instructions about how they could calculate their tax implications and where to find the information. And then this section, there's a pretty extensive FAQ that we've worked on. Here, if you open up research and reports, it will highlight all those reports that the bond projects were based on. So you have the seismic assessment, the facility conditions assessment. We pulled out a couple of pertinent graphs, the long-range facility plan, and then the futures study that was regarding enrollment. Also in this section, we have a place where anyone can submit a question, and we're responding to each and every question that is submitted. And if they're good questions, we're going to add them into the FAQ. We've already started to get some questions, and I answer those every day. And then here's just some voter information. As we come down here, we have upcoming bond informational events. So the team and I have worked to set up nearly 90 presentations at this point over the next 3 months. We'll be presenting, both the facilities and the CCI team will be presenting to every PTO in the district. So that's 54. And then we'll also be addressing a lot of different community groups. So those are all scheduled out, and board members are participating in most of those. And then the last section down here, we get into some other videos. I'm going to show you the seismic upgrade one, but I want to just point out, if you have an opportunity to go and look later, there's one regarding technology with an interview with Steve Langford, who's our Chief Technology Officer. There's one that's specific to the Beaverton High School rebuild, which goes a lot more in depth. And then that one that is also specific to Raleigh Hills. And again, both are produced in English and Spanish. And then you see the overview video here again. So I just want to take an opportunity to show you part of the seismic video. Some of the language is repeated because in order to stay out of trouble with the Secretary of State, I need to say certain things in every video. So please part in the repetition. When we get to the end and it starts to repeat itself again, I'll stop the video. But we got help with this video from Eric in facilities and his daughter's Legos. So I'll let you.
In May 2022, voters will
didn't want to do that. Let's see.
decide on a new proposed 30-year bond that, if passed, would raise about $723 million. Part of the bond money would go to seismic upgrades in school buildings. Take a look at this graph. 13 of our 53 schools currently meet or nearly meet the district's goal for damage control, leaving 40 of our schools that don't meet the district's standard for earthquake readiness. If passed, the proposed bond would fund phase 1 of that work, starting with our older middle schools: Cedar Park, Five Oaks, Highland Park, Meadow Park, Mountain View, and Whitford. Other schools would be addressed in future proposed bonds. To understand what these proposed projects would entail, we've asked construction project manager Eric Bolkin to explain.
First, I would like to say a thank you to my daughters Layla and Natalie for letting me use their Lego today. Here is a simple example of how many older buildings in the district are constructed. We have these larger posts that support the structure above. I can put pressure straight down on the building, and it's very strong, resisting that force. However, in an earthquake, the ground doesn't move up and down, it moves back and forth, which then puts a different force on the structure, making them want to tip over. And so, as the ground shakes in an earthquake, the structures have a tendency to tip over. The goal of our seismic upgrades is to make sure that doesn't happen. So, one way that we go about strengthening the buildings is to add shear walls. This is an example of a shear wall. You can see it's thinner than the posts, often made from plywood that's applied to existing framed walls. What we do is we build the shear wall, infilling between the posts. Then we attach the shear wall to the posts with clips at the top and bottom of the wall typically. Then we also attach the shear wall as well as the posts to the structure above, like so. Now, as the same motion happens, the shear wall stays, the unsupported wall does not. So all we have to do is turn all the walls into shear walls, right? Well, luckily we don't have to, because we hire structural engineers who help us decide where to install these shear walls and then direct us on how we can collect the force that's being exerted on these unsupported walls, and then we can strap the unsupported over to where we've added the shear wall. So now, as one big unit, the whole thing stays connected. Our upgrades also include making sure the electrical service, the fire sprinklers, the natural gas are all functional in the event of an earthquake, as well as making sure heavier elements such as ceilings and lighting don't fall down as an earthquake happens. That is a very simple explanation of why and how we implement seismic upgrades on our buildings.
The proposed bond is estimated to initially cost tax.
And then it goes into a repeat. So anyway, so that's just a look at part of the educational campaign that we'll be rolling out. Our timeline is we're launching the website tomorrow. So it's live right now, but we'll be doing a push on all our social accounts, on the website itself, on our BSD website, putting out notices via Parent Square, which is how we communicate with all our families. And then, like I said, we'll be putting the posters in all the schools over the next couple of days. And then over the next 6 weeks, every week we roll out another video and give it a little bit of extra love and attention as we try to get the community familiar with what the bond would entail. So that's about it. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, I agree with Carl. That is a terrific website. Really good information.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's really nice of you.
Yeah, ditto. I love the Lego example. And that knows what shear walls really are. I think that one just shows it so well. Good job.
Yeah, Eric did a really great job of taking a rather complex concept and reducing it to something we all can understand.
And speaking of complex, kind of taking the whole bond financing and kind of breaking it down into bite-sized pieces that you can, clearly identify where we're going to see upgrades, and then tracking that through on the website. That's excellent. And it's so clear for folks to understand. And then knowing that you can translate that into other languages too throughout those sites makes it really accessible for everybody. So excellent work.
Yeah, we built it in a particular way this time so that all the material can be translated into all our different languages easily, and then made a special point of producing the videos in Spanish to be more equitable.
Great marketing piece, Shelley. I need help on my doggy daycare. I know where to go now to make beautiful instructional video.
I could have a little side gig over there. I could do that, or
Yeah,
either
that's
that
really
or free
impressive,
doggy daycare, one or the other, Eric. So.
Terrific.
All right, so it's at bond.beaverton at k12.or.us. So if you guys want to do a deeper dive, it is live. I'll put the link in the chat.
That'd be
Terrific.
great.
Thanks, Shelley. And Josh and Aaron, anything else as far as new items that you needed to bring up or kind of bring to the board?
I don't have anything further, Brad. Thank you.
Or
It's a great
I
meeting
said
tonight.
board, I meant committee. Just as we're thinking about kind of the next session, as because we ran through a lot already, and I appreciate everybody's what do you want to say, endurance here. The next meeting we have is March 30th on Wednesday. Any other topics that we have right now that the committee is really mulling over that we'd want to bring back to the district for further discussion? We don't have to settle on them, but just if there's anything that's top of mind, we can throw that out now. Otherwise, we can kind of connect offline.
Not that anybody has any spare time. I know everybody's incredibly busy. But if you, as Shelley was noting, we have over 90 different sessions in schools, and many of those are going to be on Zoom. Highly encourage you, if you're able to just tune into one or two, just to hear community questions, community inquiry, I think is great for the BAC to be aware of just what's out there. So you can kind of start measuring for yourself kind of where we see support and other angles that we're getting from our community. So I just think it's another avenue for you to get information.
And if you need the Zoom links, like for those of you who have kids in our schools, you can just attend your PTO meeting. But if anyone else is looking for those Zoom links and potential dates, just throw me an email and I'll give you access to that document.
Thanks, Carl, and thanks, Shelley, for throwing that out there. That's a point to consider, is bringing in those other perspectives from each of our different corners of the community. So thank you very much. And not hearing anything else, is there a move to close?
Such a good meeting, we don't want to. But I will move that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
All right, so moved. Thank you, guys. Appreciate the support, and thank you so much for all the materials ahead of time, folks. We really appreciate all the work you did.